Welcome to Talkin' Waukesha, the podcast where every conversation springs to life.
I'm Andrew Nofke.
And I'm Anthony Ciurro.
And we're your hosts for today's journey into the heart of Waukesha.
Whether you're a local or just passing through, join us as we explore the stories, people, and hidden gems that make Waukesha truly special.
From community events to personal anecdotes, we're here to bring you the pulse of our vibrant town.
So grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's dive into another episode of Talkin' Waukesha,
where every conversation springs to life. Welcome back to another episode of Talkin' Waukesha. Today we're joined by Waukesha's City Administrator Tony Brown and Waukesha's Finance Director Joe Ciurro. Welcome.
Thanks for having us this morning.
So let's start at the beginning. We're going to be talking about the city's budget today and how that kind of happens. So how is the city's annual budget typically developed and how is it approved?
All right. I think I'll start out by just kind of explaining our process in the finance department, and we work very closely with the city administrator's office on this entire process. It actually starts early summer for us, even before summer. Now that I think about it, we part of our budget process is actually to do what we call like a projection, a 5-year projection. We kind of use our existing budget at the time and kind of look forward and see where our, project out in future years, given current financial indicators like inflation, what we expect our revenues to do. And we really want to look at the picture, look at the financial picture forward, as opposed to just looking at the 1 year that we're in or the 1 year we're going to budget for. And so it kind of gives us a little, like, the work that we have to do, what we have to accomplish down the road.
And this is pretty commonplace, I imagine, for most businesses and organizations, that you can't just focus on the year of and year ahead.
I would say that's pretty common. That's if you're not looking forward and trying to project where you're going, I think that's probably it's not a good practice.
Bit of a red flag.
Exactly, I would say so. And so that's kind of where we started, to kind of look at where we think we're going to be down the road, while also looking at the results and making sure that what's in our existing budget before we look at the next year, that we're on track, right? And so those are the few things that we do. But so we basically we update that 5-year projection, make sure we kind of know that it was, roughly around what we expected the previous year when we put together. And then basically the first half that we do after that is we're looking at our capital budget. Those are those long-term assets that we purchase, usually like it could be large pieces of equipment. It could be a lot of infrastructure improvements in the ground, a lot of road improvements. And so those are the things that we do at the first part. And then kind of as we're like preparing that portion of the budget, we start the operating budget, which is all the people that, do perform the city services, and then the department's purchases that help us perform those services. So basically we're talking about from a process that starts at least in May and goes, and finally the last approval is the first council meeting in November.
And really, at that point, there's still no end to it, because it's now, okay, let's doing, I imagine year end kind of kicks off to a certain degree at that point. And
well, in our department, yes, we have a year end, and then we're basically trying to close that year. We have an audit that happens before we start the next budget process. So in our department, it's just kind of a cycle that we're kind of used to.
Yeah, a couple breaks here and there, a couple breaths of fresh air.
Exactly.
Before the next process.
A couple holidays in between that we can celebrate, but yeah.
Yeah. So what makes this budget stand out or particularly challenging compared to past years?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in here. I don't know that it was particularly different. The thing I'd probably reflect on is how Joe mentioned the 5-year forecast. That really puts us in a position where we're looking forward. And we developed the the financial management plan, which kind of identified revenue increases, expenditure decreases. And one of the things that was outlined in there was the garbage and recycling special charge, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about later. But that was identified as the key initiative for the 2026 budget. So as much as we can always be thinking forward, it's always going to position us better in terms of the things that we have for timing and then implementing some of those items. So the goal we've set is that for any given year, we want to have a balanced budget for 2 years ahead of time. So for going into 26, 27, making sure that we do have a balanced budget. And having said that, I think probably the focus for the budget was really being conservative and fiscally prudent, the impact on homeowners, and then also kind of workplace appeal and how do we make a budget that's sustainable and allows for a decent amount of revenue growth, if you will.
So a balanced budget, we're just saying anything that's not negative, basically.
Correct.
So if we're making a little bit, but usually trying to keep it as even as possible, that
revenues matching expenditures.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, just making sure that, balance is balance and not, okay, there's a one slightly heavier scale of,
Sure.
We're not, I don't think we're ever in the game of like, let's make a lot of money. And, no, we're trying to make sure that everything's
break
paid.
even, yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing we're trying to do is cover our costs.
Yeah.
It's always a good thing. So when building the budget, what are kind of some of the key priorities or trade-offs that the city had to balance in this year or years to come?
Yeah, I think beyond the items that I mentioned before, it's really focusing on the strategic plan. So as you guys are aware, there's 4 different strategic priorities. And that drives a lot of kind of the objectives that we're trying to meet for the following year. So that's something we take into consideration in terms of are there resources we need to allocate towards those different objectives to make sure that we're finishing them in that next fiscal year. I think probably another thing is definitely focusing on employees and what the compensation increases are going to be, what the benefits are going to end up looking like that following year. So I think one thing that probably is important to note out, at least from my perspective, is that the budget itself and the general fund, 75% of it is people. So when we're talking about delivering services, it's talking about the employees that deliver those services.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a big part of government too. It's, obviously we're trying to make sure that a lot of these services are delivered and, people are the best way to deliver these services. I mean, people always think government is slow and inefficient, but that's because people are expensive, unfortunately, when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about it is a lot of what we do is kind of just manual in nature. And I don't know that it's ever going to significantly change in terms of somebody raking off a terrace or what else? A police officer patrolling the street.
Sure.
A paramedic showing up to a call to resuscitate an individual.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're lean, I think is the nice way to put it. We have an efficiency of like the people we have here are really good at what they do. And like we don't have excess people, I think is the right thing. Is like people are doing perfectly to make sure that everything's serviced.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you talked about the quality of the people. I think that's the thing that I was always impressed by coming here, but then also seeing it in action as I've worked here over the past couple of years, is that we have, well, in the case of PRF, a gold medal, Parks and Rec and Forestry system. We have accredited departments. And if you talk to different professionals throughout the state, whether that's in public safety or finance or communications, I think one of the things that I always hear is, how do you guys do what you do? Because you do it so well. And it all starts with kind of all of us working collaboratively as a team, but then also making sure that we're focusing on how do we keep on iterating and becoming better.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think what I always hear with people in local governments is these are people who want to serve other people. They want to help other people. And so people helping people is always a good thing to hear out of us cities. Like, oh, well, why do you work here? I'm making millions? No, that's never going to be the case for government. It's no, I want to help people and I want to, make a community better. Like not all of us live here, obviously, but we want to make Waukesha like our home, like as good as our hometown. Honestly, I don't live here. I know, it's not, that's a fault I have, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I almost want to be here. Yeah, I live in Milwaukee. I want to make Milwaukee jealous that we're better than them in what we do here.
Yeah. To me, my goal is always, and always has been at any job I've had, is how do we make it better than how we found it? So, like, if I retire from here in 20 years or whatever that is, I hope that we're in a better position than we are now, and each of the years moving forward until then, and kind of building that foundation for then the next generation to take over.
Yeah.
Sorry, got us off track there a
No,
little
it was
bit.
good. It's still good things to talk about. So I guess then before we get too deep or too technical into things, can you guys break down where most of the city's revenue actually comes from?
Yeah, I can start with that. I would say, when we're looking at the general fund, which is our operating fund, most of our departments run through that. They're financed by a few things. Obviously, property taxes are a large funding source. We also have some intergovernmental revenue, which is really flowing through from the federal government and the state government. We do have the ability to have some interest earnings, so we do have a cash balance ongoing throughout the year. So that's a smaller portion, but the other items are really public charges for service. So and a couple of good examples of that would be parks and recreation fees, covering the cost of those services, and then also building inspections. We have specific charges related to that. So that's kind of how that works. And then there's one other thing that's kind of one of our other major operating funds is the sewer, the clean water plant. They actually charge on a utility bill with the water utility that's next door to us, and that's those revenues completely fund that operation.
Yeah, sure. So basically, money that taxpayers go out kind of gets divvied into other hands, then slowly comes back to us in a way.
Yep. That basically, any other revenues that can happen can kind of take the pressure off. Providing those essential services is what those are for. And I would say that we do have through this process, through the budget process, every year, every department is asked to at least review those. We're not raising them every year, but we are reviewing to make sure that we're covering the costs that we need to.
Sure. And do we get kind of a report from state and federal levels of how much funding that we'll be getting in from them, if we're getting anything from them like year to year, so we can kind of help in that planning process?
It comes in, at different times. But yes, once the state has compiled all of the information from all the municipalities and counties around the state, they do start to send out notifications on what we can expect. Now, we tend to, when we're putting the budget together, we don't know specifically what the number is going to be, but we have an idea. We reach out to find out what the trends are, what they're expecting, get some unofficial numbers, and then once we get, if we get any final numbers, we tend to make sure that's in the budget before we pass it.
So I imagine we kind of assume on the lower side, assume the worst that we're getting from it, and if we end up getting more, we can allocate that as necessary.
You're going to hear from our department many times we're as conservative as we possibly can be. I guess there's a risk to being overly conservative because you don't want to necessarily be under budgeting too much. You want to be as accurate as you possibly can. It's just that you don't want to assume something, assume additional revenue that you're not going to get. As Tony said when he was talking about the overall budget process, to me, in my responsibility is to make sure that budget is balanced. So that's the reason why we tend to be a little conservative.
Yeah. Well, in budgeting 4 or 5 years out too, like you can't predict what those numbers are going to be. You could try, but even then anything could turn on a dime.
Yeah. And some of those revenues we get from other sources, like from other governments, that's tied to exactly how the economy is doing. Right. So if the economy just continues to grow at a consistent level, we probably have pretty good assumptions. Yeah. But that's the reason why you don't want to push the envelope too far when you're doing those projections.
Sure.
Yep.
Is there a hard number of like how accurate you guys have been with the budgets and how close to balance that you guys have kept the budget over the few years?
I haven't kept the statistics for you, but I would say that because we're not shy when it comes to contacting the state. We have a few people that we reach out to, and I would say that because we have that communication and they're willing to provide that information, I would say that we've been pretty good as far as being accurate in the budget process.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the other thing I just wanted to add too is that's kind of really hard to predict as well, just because of, as I mentioned, 75% of the budget is people, and people make decisions on their employment here or going to other organizations. So from year to year, we can make a certain assumption about the amount of vacancies or turnover that there will be, but we can't ever get to a point where we have a strong amount of confidence that we're going to be correct. I mean, the thing I would add to that is that recently looking at the turnover rate through October, it's the lowest percentage that it's been in roughly the past 5 years at about 7%.
That's pretty good. Yeah. So people that are working here are staying here.
Yeah, I think that through the past couple of years, it was kind of trending up. But we're seeing that that's decreasing this year, and that could be for any amount of different reasons. But I think what kind of my goal is, and I think what all of our goals should be, is to get to a point where we're kind of more stable in terms of recruitment and retention. So I think that's why, we've tried to focus in more on kind of getting those labor contracts completed, providing as much of a cost of living adjustment as we can, and then modifying the benefits where they're accessible to everyone, but hopefully at a lower, more manageable cost, and at the same time encouraging them to go see their primary care physicians to kind of not only have those interactions and build a relationship with your doctor, but also to catch things early if they do happen to come up.
Right.
Yeah.
And with the turnover, this is people who are retiring, leaving for
Right.
medical or other reasons, and or leaving for other opportunities. So
Correct.
it's not all, I'm angry with the city, I'm done, I'm gone. It's no, I've worked here for 35 plus years, and I'm ready to
Right.
call it a day for the working life.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is trying to figure out other non-monetary ways to make this a great place to work. So I think a lot of the employee events we do is helpful towards building culture. But the leadership program, the thing that I've noticed the most is it's just getting people from different departments together, so they're in a room talking to each other. Because it's not every day that we run into somebody from the police department, community development, if you don't work in either that department or that building. So I think that's the hugest thing, is just providing more opportunities for people to get together as far as that city culture building. But at the same time, things like additional holidays don't hurt either.
It's true. So with limited revenue streams and us trying to find additional revenue streams as possible, and the growing demand for services, what sort of challenges come with balancing the essential services while keeping the budget sustainable and making sure that it's balanced for years to come?
Yeah, so I think I'll start this one off, and Joe can jump in too. I'd start off by talking about the limited revenue streams. Joe just talked about kind of generally where we get most of our revenue from. But just to break that down a little bit further, as far as property taxes, that makes up roughly 62% of our overall budget. And then intergovernmental revenue, or aid that comes from the state and federal government, is about another 20%. So when we're looking at our budget, when roughly 80 to 85% of it comes from two revenue sources, that's concerning, because it's not a position where you want to be in terms of the diversity of revenue. So there's a number of things that make the situation as it is. But probably the primary one, and the one that I've talked about quite a bit, and probably people are sick of hearing me talk about, is just the state levy limits. The way that it's set up is that you can only raise your budget by the percentage of new development that happens on an annual basis. And for the city, it's been roughly 1% each year. And what that translates to on a $84 million budget is about $530,000 of additional revenue a year. So as you can see, that's not a lot of money when we're talking about a budget that's 75% people, and people would like to continue to see pay increases in acknowledgement and recognition for the good work that they do. So that's, I would say, the primary impediment to making our budgets more sustainable. And I think as we'll go through the next couple of years, that'll become more evident that that's a problem and more of a wider state discussion. And we're already starting to see that in other communities. I mean, if you look throughout just the county, we've had New Berlin talking about a wheel tax. Brookfield had an operating referendum that failed. Menominee Falls just cut their library budget to support public safety. Elm Grove talked about a wheel tax as well. And I think that's all symptomatic of kind of what the issue is, and the issue is just how we're funding local municipalities. So then the question is, okay, well, what do we do with that? And I think what we do with that is what we have been doing, is trying to be proactive about managing the situation by identifying, okay, what are the annual gaps and how are we going to stay ahead, 2 years ahead, so that we do have balanced budgets. So it is going to be more of things of looking at increasing revenues, decreasing expenditures, garbage and recycling, special charge, and just trying to develop other alternative means to continue to deliver service at a high quality.
Yeah, this is a problem I think we've heard most being on the state level of, I mean, I don't remember if this is accurate, maybe you can confirm this for me, is as a county, Waukesha County is sending more tax money to the state than the state is giving back at this point.
Correct. I don't know what the figure exactly
No,
is.
I don't remember hearing that. But
That's my understanding of the situation, and it's not surprising. Most larger, or I should say, counties with a higher population because of urban density, they probably are sending more money to the state vis-a-vis things like income taxes, sales tax, than they are actually receiving through aid programs like state shared revenue.
yeah. And with the levy being able to be built around new development, is it only new development or is it redevelopment as well?
I would say it's both
Both.
new and redevelopment.
So I mean, is that why there's kind of a little bit more focus on a lot of redevelopment within the city, is because remember, it's like a high 90% developed at this point as a city.
Yeah, so our community development director, Jennifer Andrews, one of the things that she talks about is that we're going to have to, and we have been changing our strategy as far as economic development. Because as you pointed out, we will be fully built out in probably the next 5 to 10 years. Now, the challenge with that is putting together redevelopment projects as opposed to just an open green field. It's a lot more difficult because you're dealing with different conditions that you wouldn't otherwise have to deal with in that green field. So I think the different types of tools we have to encourage that, those are in a way limited as well. Probably the single biggest tool we have is tax incremental financing. So when we're talking about developing projects, a lot of times there are financial gaps as far as the amount of money that a developer can dedicate to the project to still realize a profit margin or amount of return on the funds that they're investing. That's reasonable for them to still do it. A lot of times what we're providing in a way is gap financing for things like environmental remediation, public infrastructure. And that gap then allows those projects to occur. So the test for TIF is, but for that financing, would that project have otherwise happened? So that is probably the single most important tool. And the way I know it gets talked about sometimes is that it's, quote, corporate welfare, helping the developer in some type of way where they're profiting off of it.
Right.
But they're really not, because what they're doing is they're creating additional tax base, and that additional tax base is then paying for that assistance that's being provided.
Yeah. So I know people love hearing about the apartment complexes and, but adding a complex that has more density. So if you have, 4 houses that may have had 10 people in them, adding a complex that's more dense, more people, adds more people to pay throughout the taxes. Therefore, more taxes are spread evenly across multiple people in theory.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because the more dense our projects are, the more value it creates, the more that is able to pay for the city services that people have become accustomed to. And I think once you have larger lots where the value is maybe not as much as it could be, that's where over time it becomes harder to support the services that are needed for those properties.
Right. So keeping things fresh, keeping things new, coming up with new commercial, industrial, residential opportunities throughout the city is vital for keeping services funded. I think
that sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, you see, like, I think I know where we're going there, but just wanted to make sure it was sound.
All right, let's transition into the garbage and recycling fees. So one area
Fun topics.
that's gotten a lot of attention recently is the garbage and recycling fees. Can you guys explain kind of what prompted those changes?
I just want to kind of give a quick overview of kind of how we got to that point.
Yeah, of course.
So when we first put together that financial projection, which did develop into our financial management plan, one of the things that we saw was, looking down the road where, we just talked about the vast majority of our revenues, the inflation on those is inherently less than what our the inflation actually is for expenses, right? Mm-hmm. So if our main revenues are going up 1% to 2%, but inflation's really 3% to 4%, and really in some of the years we're pushing 5 or 6 in the last few years, you can imagine how expenses could overtake revenues very fast.
Yeah.
When you think of that,
Right.
And actually when we put together the first projection before the 2025 budget, we noticed that. If we kept going on the same path, in 2026, the expenses would have been over revenues. Mm-hmm. So we wouldn't have had a balanced budget. And so obviously that's something that's not it's not practical for us to pass an unbalanced budget. And so we put together, the financial management plan had numerous levers. We looked at numerous things over the next couple of years. We're looking at, there's, like we talked about, charges for services. We hadn't looked at charges for services in quite some time in some departments. Those were reviewed, and then some of them were increased as far as rates were concerned. Mm-hmm. On the expense side, we knew that we had to become more efficient on expenses. So there was some operating and personnel costs that were cut back going into the 25 budget. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of that was two of the levers. And the last piece that was part of, so that was going into 25, so those changes for 25. The last piece was related to the garbage and recycling fee. Mm-hmm. And so this was definitely something that we looked at back before the 25 budget and was part of the city's financial management plan. Mm-hmm. And we notified, or we informed the council that it was part of the plan. And so they did, overall kind of know what was coming, but it became official going into the 2026 budget cycle.
Right.
So that's kind of the backstory on how we got there.
So we tried, making sure that we were as efficient as possible with our budget internally first before we tried to assess any external fees.
I mean, we basically, like I said, we looked at numerous revenues, numerous expenses, and this was definitely one of the revenues that we looked at that is allowable by state statute, and it's something that the city has never taken advantage of. Is not necessarily the right term, but didn't really explore, and if they did, it was definitely before my time. So. I don't know much more about the history. It may have come up in discussion in the past, but I would say being part of the financial management plan, we made sure that the council was aware, the finance committee was aware that kind of was like our lever for 2026. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think part of that too was also working through kind of what that meant in terms of dollars and cents. So as we were working through that, I think the biggest thing was it kind of focused on 3 areas in terms of why we actually move forward with it. And I think the first was preserving the general fund. Mm-hmm. So by us removing those services from it, it shielded other services being squeezed by solid waste cost increases. Mm-hmm. And then the second was kind of aligning the cost with usage. So households are the ones that receive the collection and disposal services. Mm-hmm. But with the property taxes that were paid for it this year and will not be moving forward, were commercial properties as well, and multifamily properties. So moving forward, they will not be paying those costs. And in some cases, we've actually heard from condo owners that they're happy that the city moved in this direction because they're not paying for that service any longer.
They're paying for their own personal
Right.
it's not necessarily John's, but it's any service to
Right.
service their needs.
Yeah, and if you were taking a purely viewpoint of it where it's looking at it from a business perspective, where you're providing a service to an individual and they're paying for that service, so more of a, I guess I'll say a capitalistic model, that is essentially what the special charge is doing. And then the third is just enabling cost adjustment flexibility. So in the 8-year agreement, we have, well, I should say a 6-year agreement with 2 1-year options with John's. There is a provision in the contract where the cost can go up to a maximum of 3% each year. So the cost can increase up to 3% each year of that agreement. By allowing this to be a special charge, it gives us the flexibility to increase that amount to be able to handle the costs moving forward, versus if it was a general fund, and coming back to that first point, it would start to crowd out other services.
Sure. So this isn't because of us going with John's recently. This, like, even if we were still with Waste Management or had gone with something else, we still would have had to eventually probably come to this point.
100%.
Yes.
I don't know if we would necessarily have to come to this point, but I think the larger thing there is us going with John's that has nothing to do with the city making a policy change on how solid waste is collected and disposed and paid for.
Sure. Yeah. I just want to make sure that was
Yeah,
clarified, because
clear.
I know a lot of people
Right.
think because we went with John's,
Yeah.
that's why we have to now have this fee.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, a 3% increase for anything. I mean, thinking that, John's or whatever solid waste disposal company, 3% of an increase is covering their costs of their employees, their equipment, their everything. So it makes sense that that's going up. And in the grand scheme of things, 3% is not huge.
Yeah, and it's up to 3%. So
Yeah, it doesn't have to
less
be
than
3%,
3%. And I mean, John's probably isn't very dissimilar from the city. I mean, where are all their costs in people? What do they have to maintain? Equipment, assets, physical assets.
And they're dealing with the state to making sure that what they're doing with their disposal is doing everything properly. So, I mean, they almost are like a pseudo government entity to a certain degree.
And yeah, obviously they're trying to make a profit, whereas we're not. But the fundamentals of driving kind of how they budget for things is probably not entirely different.
Right.
And I mean, the other thing to probably mention too is with the reevaluation that happened over the past year, how the property classes or the percentage of the total property tax base, so the total value of the city, it changed a little bit. So the percentage that is single family homes decreased while the commercial amount increased. So as far as the impact of the garbage and recycling special charge, that is one thing, but people's property taxes are, at least at a single family homeowner level, are probably a little bit less as well because of that mix in property classes because of the reval.
If I remember right, it was something in the effect of like commercial properties are paying less than they were supposed to if we hadn't done this reevaluation, and homes would have been paying more than their share, where everyone should be close to be paying their 100%. And
So the city assessor, Sam Walker, one of the things he just went through at a Citizen Academy was going through assessment ratio. And what the state says is that basically, ideally, you would be at 100% of market value, plus or minus 10%. And you have, I think it's 4 years to get back in compliance once you go beyond that 10%. So down to below 90%. And we were, I don't know offhand, but we were getting down to like the low 80s. So if we didn't do a reval this year, we would have had to have done one otherwise in the next couple of years.
right, which is kind of why it seems a little crazy. Like, why are we doing it every 2 years where most places do 5? It's like, well, we're a large city and we need to kind of keep those in balance and keep those in check, so everyone's paying what they're not what they're feeling what they're supposed to feels wrong.
What's fair and equitable based on the market.
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing the reval, is
That
because
is the
of
perfect
market
wording I'm looking
conditions.
I did not have fair and equitable based on the market in my vocabulary. That's why, we have the city administrator.
Yeah, right.
Tony's had to tell other people that
I'm sure that's
every
just
now
one
and
of
then.
It's not just a buzzword. It's like this is the correct verbiage for it.
We like to follow the law.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of big on that.
Yeah. Who'd have thunk? So how were the new rates or fees determined, and how do they compare to what other cities around the area of similar sizes, what they're kind of doing to pay for that solid waste?
I mean, I can explain kind of how they were determined. I would say so. Given that we had a new contract with John's Disposal, we knew kind of what they were going to charge, based on those services plus. So basically, what John charges for their services, plus the tipping fees of disposing of the refuse, and then we have a number of customers associated with that. Right. So basically taking the estimated costs from those charges and the estimated tipping fees divided by the total number of customers.
And when you're saying tipping fees, it's literally them tipping out the garbage into the landfill, not like, here's your tip for something.
Thank you for clarifying. Yes. Basically, the landfill charges.
Okay.
Basically for the city overall. So that's basically taking all of the costs of the operation divided by our total customers that are served by that operation.
So it's just simply a nice, simple formula of, here's how much it costs for everything. Let's divide it equally versus who's using the service.
Before we get into talking about how that compares to other municipalities, I think it's probably worthwhile, Joe. Could you explain what we did with the garbage cost as it relates to the property tax levy?
Sure. So with the levy limit requirements or laws, there are certain services that are called covered services. And what the law allows for is you can take something that was generally covered by levy or your regular operating revenues.
So levy being taxes,
Tax levy,
income.
correct?
Yep.
Well, you're the real estate tax bill, and so in this case for us, refuse being a covered service, it's essentially by the law is supposed to be part of the levy, part of your tax bill. Or it's supposed to be covered by it. If you decide to charge for a covered service, you need to take out the levy that is supporting that covered service. So it allows for it, but you have to reduce your levy.
So you're just saying, I'm not charging you the tax for it, but it's still being charged.
Right. And so so as far as our budget process is concerned, we had to remove roughly a little more than $2 million out of the tax levy when we went through this exercise. And so that's I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand that we actually had to remove levy and it being a sizable amount. And so now that we've done that, that is outside of the operating fund. It's in its own special revenue fund, and and really going forward, that fund is planned to be a net zero fund. It's supposed to cover its costs. We're not, like I said,
Right.
we talked about this when we were talking to the council about it. We're not looking to make money from this. We just want to make sure that the costs are covered.
So is that a 1-to-1? Like we $2 million was taken out of the levy, and that $2 million is put in is what's being split among the residential users?
For the garbage portion of that fee, that's exactly what it was. Some of the charge is covering it's some additional revenue related to just recycling.
Okay.
Recycling itself is not part of covered services, but refuse is.
Okay.
So that's
So just the solid waste is that portion of it.
correct.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Yeah, and then just picking up on how that compares to other municipalities, I think the thing that I would say to that is it's hard to compare because what you're really talking about is the cost structure to provide the services. So we're the 7th largest city in the state by population. Our costs per household are going to be different than, pick a town or village in the state.
Sure.
So when we're talking about kind of what the cost is, I think the only thing I could say is that there is a lot of other municipalities who have gone this direction in terms of having solid waste be a special charge instead of on the property tax levy.
I think it's a fair way to put it. Because, yeah, I suppose with contract negotiations, anything like that, the price per resident is going to change from municipality to municipality and make it almost impossible to try and.
Well, and there's that. There's the distance from your community to where the waste is actually being disposed of. So there's the travel time.
So if John's is in Whitewater and they're based out of Whitewater, if they're if you're using it in Whitewater, it's probably going to be a little bit cheaper because the tipping fee is going to be cheaper for that.
Exactly. So there are it's not only kind of the size of the community, but it's where are you in location to where the refuse is being disposed of. There's a couple other factors as well that go into that calculation.
And just kind of thinking about like the future, like, and any residents that are listening to this, they're just kind of, how does this look in the future? Like, we look, whenever we're going to go into a budget process and we establish the fee or we recommend what the new fee will be, we're going to be talking to John about what their intent is on their increase for the next year, up to 3%, like Tony said. And we're gonna see also reach out and find out if those landfill charges, the tipping fees, are also going in a different direction, because we want to make sure we're able to cover those as well, any increases that they have. So basically, and just like I just said about what it is for 2026, looking just to cover the costs during the next year. So getting whatever information we can during the budget process and establishing the fee based on those assumptions.
So zooming out a little bit, what are the biggest issues that the city is facing when it comes to long-term financial planning, if we're facing any issues?
I don't know that necessarily that if we're thinking about just the city and how we operate, that we have challenges. I think it's external factors that are putting pressure on us that we have challenges. So kind of like I was talking about the levy limits before, that is the single most impactful thing that we have to try to manage each year in terms of how do we maintain services, but then also if there are additional service demands, how do we incorporate that into the budget? So just looking at the levy limit percentage increase that we've had going back to 2014, it's averaged 1.2%. And then if you look at the CPI has averaged 2.6%.
And the CPI is the
Consumer Price Index. So that's a basket of goods that we all consume, whether that's consumables like food products or different services like oil changes, etc. That basket of goods has gone up on average since 2014, 2.6%. And kind of how Joe was mentioning before, in 2023, that was 7.7%. And then our levy limit increase was 1%.
So we've been getting 1% more from the state, but inflation is essentially the CPI, the same idea roughly.
I would say roughly. I would say maybe just a little differently. 1% is the amount of that we're able to increase the levy by the statutory requirements, and then obviously CPI is a macroeconomic issue that we can't manage on a local level. But yeah, the larger point being that revenues are increasing faster than we're allowed, or expenditures are increasing faster than we're allowed to increase revenue.
So the cost of construction materials for projects, vehicles, anything that we have in our budget, everything's getting more expensive.
Yep. So I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge.
I can't think of a bigger challenge than that, to be honest with you.
And then I think probably the second biggest one is just the labor market and where it's at. I think demographically, as all pretty much developed countries, we're seeing population decreases across the board. And that's only going to accelerate as we move through time. So I think the labor market's probably only going to become more competitive. And that's why it's important that we kind of start really thinking about what does a talent management strategy look like? What is the total compensation package? What are the workplace conditions? Because we need to make that a desirable place for people to want to not only come to, but stay at. So that is something that certainly we're looking at, and things like the employee engagement survey that we completed, which we'll go over the results of next month. Those are the types of things where, in my view, it's a two-way conversation about looking at those results and then having a conversation with employees about, okay, well, what does some of this actually mean in terms of us making this a better place? Because the fact is that we all spend more time here than we do at home. So let's figure out how to not only meet the vision of the city, but have fun while we're doing it if we can.
The fun analogy is whenever you try and buy a new mattress, you spend more time sleeping than you do, than you do any other leisure activity. So how do you invest in that? Invest in a good mattress, invest in a good employer, because you're spending time with them. So it's the same mentality.
Yeah.
So is that to say you have like one of those beds that
I don't know
moves around and
I don't get the allure of that, honestly.
Automatically based on how you're sleeping that night.
right?
Yeah, no. I'm good with my probably in need of new one soon kind of mattress, but yeah, no, I still don't get the allure of the ones with all the bells and whistles of having the movement, the Bluetooth speakers built in.
Right.
Don't knock it till you try it.
I have never tried.
Yeah, if I had enough disposable income, I mean, might as well, right?
It's not the first thing on my list.
This is totally a side note, and I apologize, but I went to I forgot what is it, Tempur-Pedic or whatever it is, and I was shopping for a pillow.
Sure.
Holy cow!
Pillows
Did you
are
guys
expensive.
know that there's like 50,000 different types of pillows out there?
Yeah.
Googling pillows on Amazon, and then it's like, do you want fiber fill? Do you want
Do you want it
to be
memory
cooling?
foam? Do you want it shredded memory foam? Do you want goose down, duck down, whatever kind of?
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm that type of guy. I want to walk in a store, get my stuff, and leave. I was in there for like an hour and a half trying out pillows.
Yeah. At least they have a bed, and you're not like a Target. Like, this plastic feels slightly better than the other plastics.
Well, that's the problem, though. I was with both my daughters, and I'm laying on this bed, and I practically fell asleep one time, and they're like, "Hey, Dad, wake up!"
You found the right pillow in the right bed. Oh, goodness.
All right, coming back. So, if revenues don't keep pace with expenses, how can the city maintain essential services without compromising quality?
So I think for us, it's all about creativity, and we have some of the most creative people, and that's part of the reason why we put the financial management plan together, was to manage the situation and go to the experts within their field and ask them, what can we do to continue to provide a high quality level of service, but meet the budgetary demands that we're trying to reach. And I think that's part of any of the different types of solutions that we come up with, is going to the people who are responsible for making sure that the city receives those services, but also having a conversation with the public about what types of services do they want to continue to have, and what does that look like for them. So one of the things we'll do in this upcoming year is we'll do the community survey, and that's kind of like our report card, if you will, of how are we doing? What do people think in terms of the quality of service, and where are the areas where we can maybe improve, but what can we, I think probably more importantly, celebrate as things that we're doing well. And then in addition to that, we'll do some community focus groups, and we will have open forums, because one of the big things for me in the upcoming year is trying to build, and I think the council, this is kind of what they've said to me as well, is how do we build up greater awareness of how the state does not allow communities to have local control and make local decisions that may be different than what Stevens Point or Eau Claire or whatever municipality throughout the state has, because in the end, it's about Waukesha residents and their desires, and that may be different than other communities throughout the state. So it's building up on awareness of kind of the budgetary challenges, but then I think it's also engaging people in a conversation about the services they value as well.
We've talked about, how the budget's created, how we can adjust the tax levy year over year. But for residents who kind of want to dig in and understand where their tax dollars and fees are going, what tools and resources does the city provide to help them get a better understanding of that?
I think probably there's tons of different ways. I suppose it's whether or not people want to listen to me and Joe talk on a podcast as one. And another is our whole budget process is based around being transparent. Public meetings are based around being transparent. So when we have the review of the executive budget at the finance committee, that's one way. For the capital budget, we actually have a meeting out at the garage with all the equipment that is anticipated to or being requested to be replaced in the following year. And that's open to the public as well. All of our budgets are online. We're available if people were to come in. So we're very accessible. We're transparent in terms of the process and how we approach the budget. And it's really just, do people want to engage with us in a discussion about that and really try to understand the dynamics of it? Because a lot of it is kind of a little bit more complex than people maybe think it is. And for them to actually sit through and understand kind of those dynamics and some of the internal and external factors that we have to take into consideration as we're making those decisions, I think that would help inform them a little bit better.
I mean, the one thing I'll mention, I mean, really it's in the same spots Tony just talked about, but the one thing I'd like to note, and we're trying to make sure that we get the final budget books out there for 2026 right now. We're hoping to have them out there by the end of the first week of December. But what I would recommend any resident that's kind of interested in where our budgets go to, where the spending is, I would, it's both those documents, both the capital budget and the operating budget are long. Like we're talking about hundreds of pages, right? Exactly. Yes. And only people like myself and maybe Tony enjoy paging through that. Okay, I mean we're a different animal. I get it. So, but what I would recommend is look at that operating budget, and the first few pages is like the introduction and the transmittal letter. It kind of just gives you a high level of what our direction was when we put the budget together. And I would recommend that for any of our financial documents, usually that there is a portion in the beginning that it's just kind of explaining at a very high level what's going on. Now, if you're into the details, please feel free to page through those 200-page documents, 300 pages in some cases.
Yeah. It's almost like, I feel like there's a choose your own adventure almost style to it. It's like you have 200 pages plus that you can read through.
Correct.
If you want to go line by line, you can do that. If you want to go, the medium level, you can go department by department. They've got their cover sheets there that say, here's how much their expected costs were, here's how much they end up spending, and here's the next year's projected out.
And honestly, if any resident has a department or two that they really and generally are interested in and like to support, our table of contents are basically hyperlinks. So you can just pick the department you want to go to. It goes right to that spot in the document.
Yeah, and it's great that way, because that way you can see I know a lot of people like to say parks have a lot of revenues that come in. So how is that being spent? And a lot of it's going right back to the programs again, and they do a great job with that as well.
Hey, the other thing I just want to throw in, because I think it's timely, is there is a lot of different ways that citizens can engage with the city. So there is an e-newsletter that individuals can sign up for through our website. Also, there's a couple of different citizens academies. There's one through the police department, and then there's one that focuses generally on the city. So those are a couple of different ways that, one, you can get updates about the city, and two, you can kind of 30,000 foot level get an overview of the city. And people like Joe will come in and tell you all about the budget in a little bit more depth.
He's looking so excited about it.
Way to sell that one. Sure, whoever's been listening to this is like, oh, let me go listen to that guy more.
Well, hold on. Here's how I'll sell it. You can go to the fire department and you can hold a fire hose while it's spraying. Or you can go to the police department and jump into a squad car. I think people like that stuff, right?
I was hoping there'd be a next time, like, and then you can talk to Joe about the budget.
They show you his fancy calculators he's got.
Pocket protector, finest out there.
I'm a spreadsheet guy. If you like spreadsheets, we can talk.
That's fair. But no, I mean, otherwise, if you do want to reach out and learn more about these, you can reach out to your alderman. They can point you in the right direction, or they may have answers as well. Or there's a contact us form on the website as well that goes to each department that helps with those questions as well. So if you do have something, I mean, almost everyone's willing to chat in person, via phone, via email, but sometimes email's the easiest because we can get around to it, especially during the busier holiday times that we're at now.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is we do pride ourselves on providing a high level of customer service. So anytime I've seen that a resident has reached out about something, we're very prompt about trying to respond to it. Now, obviously, there's going to be times where there's a certain amount of complexity and it takes a little bit more time to formulate a comprehensive response. But for the most part, we are very good at responding to resident concerns.
Yeah. Speaking about resident feedback, I mean, a lot of feedback we've kind of seen is residents are wondering, why can't something else be cut? Why do I have to pay more of my taxes? Why do I have to pay extra fees? Things like that. Can you explain what limits that the city's faced when cost is being driven up, and how we've done our due diligence to try and make sure that we're not cutting services that are important to residents?
Picking the right things.
Yeah, so over the past roughly decade, the city's added about maybe 20 positions. But at the same time, the amount of services that people are looking for has substantially increased. So as an example, there's about 740 new homes. So that's more calls for police, fire, public works, inspections. There's about 550 new commercial spaces, which also increased the demand for permitting and code enforcement. And one that I found shocking as I was looking at this is that there, since 2014, has been a 44% increase in the amount of annual EMS calls. So that requires, again, more people. 75% of the budget is people. So as we're thinking about how do we maintain services, I think the city has done a fantastic job of doing that already. A lot of the staffing models that we have are very lean to begin with. And where there's maybe some opportunities to explore alternative ways to provide that service, we've tried some of those things, whether it's consulting out or different things like that. But what we found is with consulting, it's very kind of business line, if you will, or service line specific to it actually working. So for example, with like engineers and consulting them out, it actually is probably more expensive for us to consult out. But in other areas in PRF where it's lawn mowing, it makes more sense to have that as a consulted service that is supplemented by our staff. So it kind of how I mentioned earlier about that continued iteration, it's always us looking at how do we continue to provide that service. But I would say there is going to become a point at where we have to take a holistic look at how we provide services. And quite frankly, there are some services that we just may find through kind of like I talked about that we'll do next year with community feedback that we just don't provide. And that's not to say that it will impact the number of employees we have here, but it will allow us to reallocate our attention towards the things that the community really values.
I don't have a good analogy for it, but I'm trying to think of like what would be like, I guess some communities offer, a free drop-off center, which is a big cost to that community because it's the disposal fees, things like that. Yes, I know that's a
third
big
rail.
That is a big hot topic, I know, but
Well, it'd be like a community offering garbage and collection services where they go up to your household and get your carts off of the side of your garage and then pull them down the driveway.
I guess another one would be yard waste collection. I know there's plenty of communities that have yard waste collection, and that is a valued service by those communities.
Yep.
Because that allows them to just curb it, pay for stickers, pay for whatever they end up doing and going through that way. So is that a valued service? Is it not? And if you take that service on somewhere, the money's got to come from somewhere. So
Right.
try and balancing the game of you'd like the service, but do you want to pay for the service?
Yeah, because the fundamentals of it aren't going to ever change as long as there's levy limits. So expenditures are going to continue increasing at a steady rate, but then revenues are just not going to keep up with them. So we're continuously going to be kind of trying to look at how do we develop different ways of doing things.
Sure. So if you could leave residents with one takeaway about the city's budget and their role in it, what would it be?
I mean, the one thing that I would like to say is staff here, now that we look to the future, we're not trying to look at the city's finances in a vacuum. We're trying to make sure that we actually have good planning. Okay, so that's the reason why we started the projection. We started doing a financial management plan, was because we wanted to be prudent in the budget process, right? We wanted to make sure we were doing the right thing, and we were making sure that we were in a good, solid situation when it came to what the city has for finances. So the one thing that I will say this, and this is just me, I've been here for 4 budget cycles now, and I will say that we, in the finance committee, we meet regularly to discuss the budget in more detail than we do necessarily at the council. The council expects the finance committee to do a lot of the hard review, ask some questions. They actually invite all the alders to come, whoever can come, to ask questions during that review. And so it's good for, if you can't come in person as a resident, watch it online. I think but I would say this is, would love to have more residents come and just to the finance committee in general, because those are the topics we deal with. But definitely during the budget process, both the capital and the operating, we haven't had a lot of turnout. And I'll say that's pretty common in a lot of cities, unless a specific topic pops up that they want to give their opinion on. But I would say, like, if you want to give your opinion on anything that's proposed, that's the time to do it. Come to the finance committee first. And then anytime it goes before council, because the council in the end approves the whole budget in both cases, if you can be present to let your alders know, I would recommend making sure that you can do that. You don't have to come to all the meetings because we have many.
Yeah.
But I would say I'm sure they would appreciate understanding what anyone else's opinion on what's being presented.
Yeah, and I would just tag on to that and say that all the services we provide, it takes people. It's the people that you see on a daily basis on the street, picking up leaves right now, and all those different services. And if there's an opportunity to engage with the city and find out more about how those services are provided, as Joe just mentioned, I think that'll be helpful in trying to understand how the city operates and the reason we do things the way we do. A lot of what's done is very well thought out. Most of what we do, almost 100% of what we do, I would say, is very much thought out in terms of the process in which and how we're going to get it done, and making sure that we are being good fiscal stewards of taxpayers' money while we're doing that. So the more that citizens engage with us in those conversations, I think the more of what we do will start to make sense to them. And I have to say that it's impressive to see, like at the Citizens Academy that we're running right now, level of engagement and the passion that people have for this city, it's awesome to see, because there is so many people invested in this community and wanting to make it great. What we're looking for, and we'll be looking for like next year, is, okay, well, what does that mean, and how do we realize that working together?
For listeners, thank you for listening through a heavier topic for sure.
Yes.
I mean, say it is dense. Feel free to listen to it multiple times over. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to anyone here in the city. We're willing to help. Thank you both for talking through the budget with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate
it, guys.
And that's a wrap for another episode of Talkin' Waukesha. We hope you enjoyed diving into the heart of our city with us.
If you have a story to share or just want to say hello, reach out to us on social media at City of Waukesha on Facebook. We love hearing from our listeners.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review if you enjoyed the conversation. It really helps us spread the word.
As always, thanks for tuning in to Talkin' Waukesha, where every conversation springs to life.